Well, it should be live here in just a couple of minutes. There, we're going to go live here. And there we are. We are live. Yes, we're live. Good. So hopefully I will be able to see everybody's questions. I hope. See if I can connect here. Connecting to YouTube. That's the one I need. Oh. Hey, there's Wiley's 3D. How are you? Who we got over here? Glenn and Cheryl Campbell. Hey, how are you? For some reason, I'm still not getting. Man, I forgot about this show today. Really brightened my day. Thanks. Hey, there you go, Brian Baker. I have to get this up and running. Okay, let's see if I can get this up and running. Reconnecting there. Connect to Twitch. This is where. How's the audio today, by the way? Hopefully, the audio is coming in properly. Okay, so I only have one of three up and running. Oh well. Hey there, Mark Baker. How are you? So then I'm going to do this. You over there. Make it a little smaller. Audio's good. A bit quiet though. My mic is on monitor mode in front of me, and the HVAC is blowing hard here at the office. What are you doing at the office today, Brian? Jeez, come on, man. Shouldn't be at the office. We're gonna go to Facebook over here, I guess. And we'll just use it from here. Just as easy to use from here. That way I can see everybody's comments. There we are. And I like to be able to see your comments. So as soon as it loads, of course. This PC is a little quiet at times. We're going here. Come on. There we go. As long as I can see the chat, I'm happy. And now I can. So let's see who I missed here. We've got Ken Starrock. Hello, sir. I got a couple of announcements to make today. Who do we got here? We've got Frank Awesome, Cheryl Campbell, Jim McGregor. What else we got up there? We got the German printing nerd. So there we go. So I can see everybody's chat. I can see what's going on. I can see here. So we're in my home today. It's still a heck of a mess, as you can probably tell. I haven't got this light on today because I got nothing really to show down here. David Sell, hello from Minnesota. There's the German printing nerd, Don. How are you today, sir? Hopefully you're doing good. We are going to get started here in just about a minute. I'll run the intro and then we'll get moving. I love it. Hey, there's Glenn Jones. Is this on the Googles? No, it's just started to rearrange my printer area. All right, so let's just run that intro. Hey, welcome to Coffee with Rich. This is the First Layer live stream. I'm here in my home studio today. And as you know, I'm Richard Cleveland. I'm your host. I'm here 3 times a week with you. Today we're doing a live stream instead of doing a recorded show because, well, I couldn't get into the studio today. So we got no recorded show. So we're going to do something a little bit special today. We're just going to have a live stream. We're going to talk about 3D printing. We're going to talk about painting. We're going to talk about finishing. We're going to talk about whatever you guys want to talk about today. So get your questions going. Grab something to drink. We're in for a bit of a haul today. So now I can get rid of that. There we go, because you guys all know who I am. Don, the German printing nerd, says he got this today. Well, let me just see what it is, and then we'll go and find out. And of course, it's in German. I don't read German. So you got an MSI 970 gaming motherboard, an Athlon 2. That's not a bad little start there. That looks good. That looks great. So, if you want to know anything about my streaming setup here at home or about some of the paints that I'm using, be sure to ask or just put a comment there, and I will be all over that. And that way, I'll be able to see what's going, or I'll be able to tell you guys what I'm using. But first and foremost, for those of you guys that don't know, today, if you're a Patreon at the $5 level and above, the very first episode went up on the Dark Side build. So by all means, go ahead and check that out. If you are at the $5 level and above, I'm trying to get some more content done this week. Of course, he is now ready for primer. I have a little bit of areas to fix around his boots. I've got his hands all fixed. And then we're going to continue on with that. So let's talk about filler primer. Brian Baker wants about a rattle can, and I felt like I was spraying pudding that took forever to dry. Any recommendations to make it more model friendly? Well, it starts with the proper model filler or filler primer. And, you know, I've got all kinds of filler primer around here. And do I have one right in front of me? Of course not. Or do I? Let me just see. Let me just see, Brian Baker. If I can find one, give me 2 seconds, and I am going to grab the filler primer that I use. I'm back. So here I am. I'm back. Okay. So the filler primer I use is the Rust-Oleum filler primer high build formulation. This has got an any angle sprayer on it, not anymore because I broke it off, but this can's empty anyway. But I do want to point out that there's a couple of things to really take into consideration with this stuff. Because it is a high build primer, it's going to come out a little thicker. You want to make sure that you're pulled back on the model and you're just doing light coats and then build it up. So you're going to do one coat, let it dry. You're going to do another coat, let it dry. But you're not going to, make sure you got complete coverage. You just want to mist the model the first time around just to get some primer on there. Then you want to turn around and start doing a couple more coats till it's completely coated in primer, and that should solve your gloopy problem. The other thing that you can do with this, and I've done this a few times, and there I am hitting my mic. I've done this a few times where you can actually take the can, submerge it in water about halfway up, warm water. You don't want to put a pot on the stove and then stick this in and it'll explode. But if you've got you boil the kettle, you put it into a jar or a larger container, set your primer down in there. What it's going to do is it's going to warm up the material that's down at the bottom. When you take it out, give it a really good shake. That's the other secret to this stuff, is you really have to shake it well to get the material to flow properly. So I hope that answered your question. Glenn Jones 1, Glenn Jones 2. Let's see what I'm missing over here on Facebook. So I'm going to just quickly take a look. Hey, there's Tim Barth. It's been a rough week for 3D printing here in my house. Lots of scrap I can't seem to win. I go through that myself. It happens to me all the time. So Brian says he bought the wrong stuff. Okay, so hey, there's Jim. Oh, you said Susan. I see where you're going with that. To me, a surface primer, Ken Strock saying over on YouTube. That I agree with. To me, a surface primer is very good, but it's not good at filling in layer lines. I have some Tamiya surface primer. I don't use it very often because it doesn't fill in layer lines. What I am going to be trying, because I'm going to be doing this guy, I'm going to be painting him this week. He's going to get some primer on him, and then we're going to start painting the skin tones. I'm going to grab another primer. I hate doing this. I should have been more prepared, but here I am. I'm back now. Tim Barth, I really enjoy watching your Facebook Lives. Keep up the good work. Thank you very much, Tim. I really appreciate that. I'm glad that you're getting something out of them. So this right here is some primer that you can put through your airbrush. You're hearing it shake up. This is the gray primer from Vallejo. It's a really good primer. I really like it. I can hear myself in headphones over there, so I got to turn it down. This stuff is really good. What the secret to getting this stuff to stick properly is when you put it through your airbrush, you don't have to thin this down at all. You just put some of this in your airbrush and away you go. Hello, Trevor D. So you put this in your airbrush. This is the gray. You can get it in black. You can get it in white. And you can get it in several other colors. With a model like this, the idea is that you want to make sure that you've sanded, give the whole model a pre-sanding with 120 or 180 grit sandpaper. Because what's going to happen is if you're going to prime it with not a rattle can and you want to use something that's not going to cause any issues respiratory wise, then this is a good primer to use. It's great on plastic. It's great on PLA. And I'm going to be doing this model with this stuff because I have a spray booth at home and we have elderly people that live with us. So that smell of the other primers that I use can really, really cause issues throughout the house, because that stuff stinks, as most of you guys know, because of what's in it. So this gray primer is the primer that I use, and I also have it in black and white. So what I'm going to do with this guy is I'm going to spray all of the skin detail with the black primer. That's going to give me two things that I can do. I won't have to do a black wash over this because I'll already have black embedded in all the little cracks and crevices of his skin. And then I'm going to use the gray primer on everything else. And the reason for that is that once I've done the black, I can come back and I can start doing my dry brushing of the skin textures right away. And again, like I said, when it comes to painting this particular model, he is gray. So when you've got a rock-like texture, you don't have a lot of variation in color, especially at this scale. We are going to put a lot of color, and we're going to use various different grays, some blue grays, some brown grays, some light grays as well. We're going to be doing a really good layering of the colors, and that's all going to be part of the Patreon. Glenn Jones, when I'm sure that the printer is in good shape, I bake the filament when I think it is maybe a moisture issue as low as the oven can go for about 4 hours. That's actually a really good tip. Glenn, when you think that your material has got too much moisture in it. Now, there's a good way to tell is if you're using PLA, it's going to be really brittle. So you can snap it off pretty easily. That's when you'll know that there's too much moisture in it, and you'll want to go ahead and throw it into an oven or something along that line just to bake out that moisture. You don't want to bake the material at too high a temperature, maybe at about 150 for about 2 or 3 hours, but keep an eye on it because you don't want it to melt and then become one big sticky glob in your oven. Now, some of the other paints I'm going to be using, of course, I am going to use Vallejo paints. This just happens to be a black metal, which is really like a gunmetal gray. Yeah, you're right. It also pops when it's extruding, Tim Bar says. Hello, Kevin Schumann. How are you today? Glad to see you here. So yeah, this the Vallejo Air is another paint that I use, and I use this also not only just in the airbrush, but I also use this as a brushable paint as well. Then we've got some Model Master acrylics, which I really like. What else do we have? We've got, of course, my Liquitex Basics, which you can find these in any art store. That I use. What else do I use? I use all kinds of stuff here. We've got some golden. This is a shading gray, so this is very thin paint, and I'll use this when I'm shading areas. We have some of the Liquitex inks. We have down here some of the FW inks, which again, these are great for throwing through your airbrush if you got an airbrush. I am trying very hard to make sure that when I do the painting tutorials that I am showing you both brush and the other technique with an airbrush. Some models are going to require an airbrush more than others, and that's just the nature of the game. You'll also see that every once in a while I use gray primer like this in a rattle can. I like this gray primer. It's really good. This is, again, Rust-Oleum. You can find that just about anywhere. Maker Mike's. I've been having the issue recently when printing a box seams before the layer height changes is moving into the center a few inches, leaving a string-like line all the way up. Does not show on the slicer. So what you're getting is something like this. I don't know how well you guys can see that there. You're getting a string-like texture like this. hopefully that's what you're getting. If that's what you're getting, two things could be happening. One, the environment in which you're printing in. I've noticed here since we've gotten into summer that a lot of my PLAs are doing that same thing. They are stringing like crazy. Yeah, it's a line in one spot. That's where it's starting and stopping. Um, so when it's moving, it's got that little bit, very little bit of angel hair, as I like to call it, coming off the nozzle. Try lowering your temperature a little bit, about 5 degrees or so on your nozzle. See if that takes it away. If that doesn't take it away, try working with your retraction settings a little bit in your slicer and just retract it a little bit more or a little bit faster. That should eliminate a good portion of it. Yeah, it's like I said, since summer has come, I have noticed that we're getting that same issue here. So it has a lot to do with your environment in which you're printing. Even at the shop, like at Spool 3D, we are getting so much of that. It's just driving me nuts. No matter what we're printing right now, with the exception of a couple different filaments and where the printers are in the shop, also determines kind of what you're getting. Um, so yeah, just play with your retraction a little bit. You want to pull that filament back up a little bit in your retraction a little bit faster, and that might eliminate some of it, and also drop the temperature or lower the temperature down about 5 degrees. Hopefully that'll help you. Okay. Hi, Rich. Bill Stork says, have you ever had a problem switching from PET-G to PLA with an all-metal hot end? No, actually, I haven't. You just have to remember that when you're purging, it's a good idea to take some leftover filament, like I've got back in here. Take a little bit of leftover filament and just drive that in there and just push out all of that excess material, that PETG material. So you are going to heat up the nozzles so that you're like you would be printing with PETG. So if you're going to, 240, 245, this is going to melt a lot faster, but just push it through till this color or whatever color that you're using on the PLA starts to come through nice and clean. Once you're at that point, you should have no problems. It's why it's even moving at that spot is having gets me. Should not even be moving that spot. This is going back to your slicer. Check your slicer to see if it's got a start and stop point in the exact same position. Best bed setup for PET-G, Trevor's asking. I would say to sit right around the 80, 85 bed temperature. Again, it's going to depend upon um, it's going to depend upon where you are in the world. If you're in a cooler climate, you're going to want to bring that bed temperature up maybe to 90. I find I get my best adhesion here in Calgary right around 85. And Glenn Jones, what are the CR10's retract settings? Just for an idea if I'm off. Oh, that's a tough one. Because depending on what slicer you're using, you're going to set that up in your slicer. You're not going to set that up in the CR10. But you'll set it up in the profile in your slicer for the CR10. Ever used carbon PET-G? No, Tim, I have not used carbon PET-G. What is the exact temp? Oh, that's the exact temp that you use. Okay, Trevor. Awesome. Awesome. I'm sure I missed a comment or two back here on Facebook. So give me just a second so I can go back here, but okay, I didn't miss any on Facebook. Okay. Brian Baker says start with ultra low retraction, then dial it back until the stringing stops, and that's a great piece of advice. Brian Baker, you guys have seen him on the show a few times. So mine's about 1.5 to 2 millimeters retraction with all metal hot ends, and that's a good sweet spot, I think. 1.5 to 2 millimeters. I don't even know what I've got it set on my machine back here, but I'd have to have a look. Right now at home, I've got my CR10s, which are just printing PLA, and I surprisingly enough, I don't have them running today. I do have to get them running though. Tim Barth, yeah, okay, I saw that question. So with that said, um, yeah, we're going to be talking about materials and temperatures on Friday or on Wednesday's show. I've got a nice list of starting temps for different materials that you're using. Before we get into talking about that, though, we're going to talk a little bit about nozzles again. And I know I've covered this a lot in the past, but it always seems to be that there's still a little bit of confusion about what type of hot end that you need for certain materials. Glenn Jones, right. I was just wanting to compare what settings you use for the stock cure or simplify sometime. Maybe post it. You know, actually, I will post it. That's actually a really good idea. I had a little bit of stuff on my ring there. I was wondering why I was feeling so. Yeah, I will post what I'm using, but again, remember that mine may only be sort of a starting point for you guys because if you're in the southern climates, like in the southern states, not up here in Canada, um, temperature, humidity, all that is going to affect air conditioning in your home is going to affect your prints as well. So make sure that you check all that because all that plays into account on your 3D prints, and that's something that people don't realize is that things like PLA have a high moisture attraction rate. I'm not sure exactly what is that hydrothermic or hydro something or other. Can't remember the name of it. Trevor D says I like nylon. I've never used an all metal hot end. I might need to buy one from you guys to experiment. Okay, an all metal hot end. What it means is that the throat and the nozzle are completely metal. There's no PTFE liners in the throat, especially because if you're printing at higher temperatures, hydroscopic, that's the word I was looking for. Um, so when you're printing higher temperature materials that are going over 240 and up, the PTFE liners inside your 3D printing nozzles or in the throat tend to break down. At 240, that's kind of their ceiling for heat. So if you're going over that, what's happening is literally it's kind of melting in a way, and it can flare. It can make the orifice of that be a lot smaller, so your filament can clog, and it can cause all kinds of issues. So my recommendation is if you are going to be printing with PETG or any other material that uses a higher temperature of 235 and up, and I like that 235 because it's a nice sort of middle ground. 235 and up, make sure that you have an all metal throat and an all metal nozzle. The rest of it doesn't matter. um, the micro Swiss all metal hot end is super, Trevor says, or pardon me, the German printing nerd says. I use one micro Swiss all metal hot end on my Wanhao duplicator i3, and that's why I was able to do this. Now this Luke bust to go with the Han Solo bust, which I will be painting again. I printed this at 0.06 millimeter layer height, and I figured I had enough top um, parts, but I don't know how well you can see that. If you guys can see that. There we go. See how I've got a few holes and a little bit of bubbling? What I didn't do is I didn't put enough infill in the base. So what happens when when you're printing very fine like that, what happens is it can basically skip over the spaces in between the infill. So I need a little tighter infill, but you know what? For all intent and purposes, I can sand that out, fill it up, and go ahead and start to paint and prep and paint him. And I will be doing both the Han and the Luke coming up on Patreon as well. And show you guys exactly how I go about doing the skin, doing the clothing, doing the hair, and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, Trevor, you're right. I can do more top layers, and there's 12 top layers on that, just so you know. Glenn Jones, extra top layers can assist with that. Yes, it can. I should have gone up higher, but if I'd used simplified 3D's processes, I could have told this to go ahead and do 4 layers of 50% infill over top of the 10% infill that I have here. And then that would not exist with the amount of layers that I have. It's just a process. That's all it is. Just making sure. Evening, folks. There's Mayan Misfit. Hello. The biggest issue with all metal hot ends is that you don't need to be much more wary of adequate cooling, or you do have to be much more wary of adequate cooling. And you're absolutely right about that, Brian Baker. The PTFE liner is good at masking cooling issues. That is very true. What you need to do when you're upgrading to all metal is make sure you have a fan that's pushing enough air, not too much, not too little. Cura's 3.4's new adaptive infill is helping me a lot, Brian Baker says. Excellent. I got to play with 3.4 a little bit and look at all of the new stuff so that I can bring it to you guys, because I know a lot of you guys don't have Simplify 3D, and at $150 US, I don't blame you for not having Simplify 3D. I like the program. It works well for me. Hello, Brian Freeland. I see you over there on Facebook. But Cura is now really stepping up their game. They've added more profiles for different printers into 3.4. So there's a lot of added flexibility, and they've got some new features that I think are really knocking on that back door of Simplify 3D. And I think if you are not a Simplify 3D user yet, then I would stick with Cura 3.4 and start to learn a little bit more about it. And I'm going to be learning a little bit more about it so that I can bring you guys a little bit more of what the new features are and show you how to use them and how to incorporate them into your everyday printing. Hey, there's Derek Matthews. Hello, sir. German Printing Nerd says he uses Cura. Dawn, I hope you are getting all of your printer issues solved. I know you were having a few issues with your Wanhao Duplicator 9. I hope those are all being solved right now. Speaking of the Duplicator 9, I get asked about that thing quite a bit. So I'm going to just kind of give you my general impression of that printer. It prints well. Out of the box, it prints well. My only biggest issue, and anybody who's seen the Duplicator 9 knows that there's a ribbon cable that will actually run the length back into the board, which is in the front end of the machine. But that ribbon cable that goes down to the hot end, there's no way stock-wise to keep that ribbon cable out of the way from doing taller prints. So when you do a tall print, like let's say you were doing something like this all in one go, that ribbon cable can catch your print, and it can either knock it off the bed or cause your machine to shift. And so you want to be wary about that. Again, like I've said in the past, is Wanhao is famous for throwing their printers out onto the marketplace and see what sticks, and then waiting for us as their consumers to give them the feedback. Creality is no different in that respect. CR10 is a great example of that. Even though the CR10 is still being sold, it's a great example of how they put out a printer that wasn't fully, in my mind, ready for the marketplace. It worked, but there's still some issues with it. So they waited to hear the feedback that their client base gave them and took that to the next level and created the CR10S, which again is a great printer. It still has a few drawbacks, and it's just the nature of the game. I don't know why people are still using ribbon cables in this day and age, Mayan Misfit says. And I agree with you. There's no reason for any company that's building a 3D printer to be using a ribbon cable. There's absolutely no reason for it. Yes, you can get wider ribbons, smaller lines, but you still have multiple pins that are taking up what normally a thicker wire would. Good example is the thermistor wires, or not thermos, but the heater cartridge wires on the hot end. Those are fairly thick. So what they're doing is they're using multiple wires in that ribbon cable to accommodate the flow of electrons into the heater cartridge. So, you know, let's say there's 3 or 4 wires for the positive side and 3 or 4 for the negative side. I already told Gary Chen that the cooling for the hot end is BS and should be changed. Yeah, the cooling for the hot end seems to be a little bit inadequate, and that, you know, that's the same thing with the Wanhao Duplicator 6, which I have at the studio. That particular one is has a kind of a funky way of cooling. That's why I never use PLA in it, because it doesn't do a good job of printing PLA. It does a great job of printing ABS because I don't have to use any part cooling. There's Aaron Binza. How are you today, sir? I'm glad you joined us over there on Facebook, or over here on Facebook. Yes, I'm in my home studio today. It is still a work in progress, so don't judge me too harshly. Went out yesterday and got myself a free office chair because I was sitting on a stool before and it was highly uncomfortable on my back. And so we're just slowly making it. We got a couple of soft boxes. We got a scrim up there, and then we've got this camera right here, which is for my down shot. And if you guys want to see that really quickly, let me go to my down shot. I'll have to turn this on so you guys can see what's going on there. So this is my down shot. Right now I've got the laptop here so that I can see your guys' comments and that sort of thing. And let's just go back. But that's normally where you're going to see me doing painting, or if I'm showing something off when I'm in my home studio. Hey, Wade Lindstrom, glad to see you're here. When we're in my home studio, that's kind of the way you're going to see me demonstrating stuff. Maybe some painting. Again, if you are a Patreon at the $5 level and up, the first part of Dark Side is now on Patreon. Again, I want to thank all of my Patreons for all of your support of this show. It does go a long way to help me, you know, get stuff like this, like paints and things that I need, glues, stuff that I can't source from Spool 3D. And Spool 3D is a great sponsor of the show, and I love them. Derek's a great guy, and you know, he provides me pretty much with everything that I need, other than, you know, the other things that go into 3D printing. So if you're not a Patreon and you want to become a Patreon, I don't have the lower third with me at home. I should have brought it from the shop, but I will be bringing them home. You can go to patreon.com/the first layer, and you can sign up for one of the levels there. And thank you again to all my Patreons, because you guys do a fantastic job of helping this show stay going. What else did I want to say? Oh, hey, listen, if you like the content that you see on the show, and there's something that you want us to cover or want me to talk about on the show and do a little bit more research on, be sure to drop me an email at richard@thefirstlayer.com. And I will respond to that email, and we'll take a look at what it is, and we'll go from there. Other than that, again, if you like the content and you'd like to show your support for the show, and you're not so much into the Patreon commitments, I understand that. I'm not asking everybody to do that. But if you feel like it, you can also buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/thefirstlayer. And all that goes into the same pool to help out to fix things. Other than that, thank you to Spool 3D for all of their assistance and their support. You know, they give me printers to play with. They give me stuff that I can review and send to you, send out to you guys. So print it right, print it with Spool 3D. Make sure that you go check out their website today at spool3d.ca. They've got everything from printers, filaments, and parts, everything that you need to get into 3D printing. Other than that, that's pretty much it. We've been going for about 41 minutes now. Usually, you know, I try and keep these things around a half an hour. It is Monday, and tomorrow is back to work. A lot of orders to get out tomorrow. We still have keychains available. You can drop me a PM here on Facebook if you want one. We have stickers still available. What's planned for future episodes? Well, that's actually a great question. We are going to dive into the new Cura 3.4. That's going to be coming up in future episodes. We are going to be taking a look at the new Mamarubot 400 by 400 by 500 printer. We are going to be teasing a brand new build that we're going to do. Derek and I have been talking about doing a build with a 500 by 500 by 1000 millimeter build. Ultra quiet. Cheryl, you have a wonderful day too. We've got, I'm going to be doing the rebuild on Jess's ANET A8. We're going to make it into an ANET M8 with an all-metal frame. And so that's coming up. Daniel Wright, love the stickers in the keychain. Thank you very much. Hope everything is hanging out. We've only got a few of those keychains left. So when they're gone, until I get to another laser cutter, and I can get them at a great price, then, you know, that'll be great. My wife wants a keychain now. Well, Daniel, we can probably get you a keychain for your wife. Not a big deal. Wow, just all kinds of hearts and wows and over there on Facebook. As you guys know, we did get monetized by YouTube. So please, if you're catching the show at the end of a live stream or a new episode goes up, please just let the ad play. It helps the CPM, and it goes all into the same pot to helping everything here. That sounds, Ken Strock, that sounds great. 100 by 500. No, no, no. No, no, no. That's 500 by 500 by 1,000. 1,000 by 5,000? If I could get a bed that big, I would. But with that said, guys, thank you very much for joining me today on the First Layer, the Coffee with Rich. I hope everybody I hope I got everybody's questions answered. And, you know, go have yourselves a coffee right now, or tea, or a cold beverage, or a mixed beverage. I think I'm going to go have a mixed beverage. It's Monday. I can do that. And we are off and running. So until next time, remember, my friends, that the First Layer is always your foundation to a great print. Love you. See you next time.